Hello and welcome back to Dune Awakening Direct, our series where we discuss all things Dune Awakening. So thank you so much for joining us back here on Arrakis. We're starting today's episode off with a look at a trailer that we unveiled just recently at Summer Game Fest. Then we will welcome back Joel Bylos, the creative director for Dune Awakening, to take a deep dive into the history and talk about the spark that ignites, well, this inferno, and we'll also answer some questions you might have about the player's spiritual journey on our Arrakis with Leah Talbot, the senior narrative designer. We'll also show some new specifics from the character creator and how you will start your journey on Arrakis and the decisions you will have to make before you embark on your journey. Then finally, we'll close out this episode with Joel, who's going to shed some light on what makes Dune Awakening an MMO and what sets it apart from survival games you may have played before. So let's kick things off with our new story cinematic.
The only peace I find is a future that never happened. One where I, Paul Atreides, was never born. I created the future until it created me. But I see a narrow way, a path that might have been. What if my mother had obeyed her orders and given birth to a girl? Everything would change. Dr. Yue exposed before his betrayal. A world where my father lives. House Atreides surviving the Battle of Arrakeen. Sardaukar deployed to protect the spice melange. A war of assassins spreading across the planet. Fremen exterminated. No Muad'Dib. No Lisan al-Gaib. No Kwisatz Haderach. All of my visions lead to horror. Except for this one. This one leads to you.
Now I have the utmost pleasure of welcoming back Joel for a quick chat. It's great to have you here again.
Thank you very much for inviting me back.
Of course. Obviously, Paul does not exist in this alternate timeline, or rather alternate history. That is huge. Please walk us through the thought process of that.
Sure. So when we started working on the game, we knew that we wanted to have different factions. We wanted to have it set on Arrakis. And Paul, as a character, casts a shadow over everything that happens there. He's such an important figure to the universe. And we were looking for, like, how can we bring players in, make them feel like they have some agency in this world and they're not just going to join Paul. And so we looked in the timeline, we worked with our partners, the Herbert Estate and Legendary, and we found like a moment where Jessica made a choice about the child she was going to give birth to. And in our timeline, she gives birth to that daughter. And that changes everything, right? Paul not being there creates this real vacuum of power on the planet. There's still a lot of the same events occur because Duke Leto was still, training this force of elite fighters that made the Emperor jealous, which made him make a deal with the Harkonnens, which made, the Atreides still end up on Arrakis. But then because of the events that Jessica chose, she is now more tied to the Bene Gesserit faction, and they have trained her as a truthsayer. And she has the recognition of Yue's betrayal before it happens. And that leads to the Atreides being prepared for the Battle of Arrakeen, which means that they manage to defend themselves, which means that they don't get wiped out. And that leads to these major factions being in conflict on the planet of Arrakis.
Let's talk about Lady Jessica's decision then, which, started the whole thing here. Obviously, with her complying to the Bene Gesserit rule of having a daughter, why did she even make that decision in the first place?
Well, she's always been torn in her loyalties, right? She came to the Duke and she fell in love with the Duke. But she also had the agenda of the Bene Gesserit in her mind, right? And then there's the other side of course, that the Duke never made her his wife. And she has to make a decision. And of course, in the book, she made the Paul decision. In our game, she made the Ariste decision. And that, I think that people are very complex, and she had these very complex ideas going on. And so, torn in her loyalties, in this case, she chose the Bene Gesserit.
So let's talk about Arista's, part of the story then. Is she taking up Paul's mantle, or is she just a completely different, she is a completely different person. What's her agenda? What's her spiel?
Ariste has her own path to walk, right? And the path of the Lisan al-Gaib and the Kwisatz Haderach is not available to her, and it doesn't happen because events don't play out the same way. She doesn't end up in a situation where she has to face any of that. So she is a precocious girl. She grew up with the Bene Gesserit training that her mother would have given to Paul, the Mentat training that Thufir would have given to Paul, right? She has sword masters like Duncan Idaho training her, and the great troubadour Gurney Halleck teaching her. So she has a lot of the same abilities and trainers as Paul, but she finds herself in a very different situation in the world because, of course, the end goal of the Bene Gesserit here is that the daughter of House Atreides marries the heir of House Harkonnen in order to create their Kwisatz Haderach.
Do hate that for her, I'm not gonna lie.
So Ariste ends up under a completely different set of pressures, right? And that leads to a very different sort of life for her.
So yeah, obviously with the Duke as well as the Baron both being alive, what's happening to Arrakis, to our beautiful planet here? Who has fiefdom over it? What's the situation?
So after the war, or after the Battle of Arrakeen, when the Harkonnen attacked, Duke Leto petitions a Landsraad, and the Emperor decrees that the war can continue on the surface of Arrakis, but it has to be contained there. So he says it's fine for them to fight as long as they're there, but he also declares that spice still has to flow freely. So he sends the Sardaukar to police the spice harvesting operations and make sure that spice still flows out of Arrakis and into the Imperium because it's such an important resource.
So looking at Arrakis, in the trailer it does say at the very end, the Fremen being, they're gone essentially. Are they gone, or are we like figuring out where they went? Where are we at?
I think that's the central mystery of the entire game, right? The Fremen are missing. Mm-hmm. Imperium propaganda would say that they've been exterminated, but we have our doubts. So as a player, a part of the core story that you'll be following as a player is find the Fremen. And as you play through the world, you walk in the footsteps, you find the places where the Fremen once were, you explore their rites, you explore their culture, but where are the Fremen? And can you one day find them? I'm not going to answer that question, but that's part of what the story is all about.
But their cultural impact is still very much felt as I'm traversing through Arrakis.
Both their impact, like both the remnants of what they left behind when they left the abandoned Seaches and things like that, but also the vacuum of power, right? Because the Fremen that was their territory, and they were extremely fierce about defending it. And with them not in the area, other people have started to fill in the gaps.
I do want to talk about the impact that story and narrative has, though, on Dune Awakening, because it is a survival MMO. If we're looking at the survival part, usually the extent of story in a survival game is, oh no, your plane crashed. Oh no, you're shipwrecked. Oh no, it's an apocalypse. Figure it out. Clearly, that is not the case for Dune Awakening. There is a lot of story to be explored for the players.
Absolutely. I think we want to give players a clear journey to follow in the game, right? So they can explore the world, and they have this backbone story thread that they're following through as well. If they're interested. If they're not interested, they don't have to care that much about it, right? It's there. But you follow a fairly in-depth story, and it's kind of always plans within plans. So you're always having to think about what people actually want and what the motivation is. Like, why are you looking for the Fremen? Is it a really important question that you should probably ask yourself as a player? Like, what exactly have you been sent to do this for? And I think these kind of elements provide a little more motivation for players as they explore the world.
I do love that. What are your thoughts here generally? I mean, obviously by creating an alternate history and timeline, lots of different moving pieces, can we still expect to see similar beats that, we know and love from the books or the movies?
Absolutely. I think that just because Paul doesn't exist, a lot of the factions have the agendas that they had, right? And they're still trying to achieve the things that they were trying to achieve even when Paul did exist, right, in his universe. So you will encounter, first of all, characters who maybe would have died in the books due to certain events. They're present in the game. You'll also encounter factions trying to achieve goals, but in a slightly different way because they don't have to account for the Paul element, right? So for players, it's great because I think Dune fans should get a kick out of exploring the way that the thought experiment of like, okay, if Paul's not here, what is here? And what are people trying to do, right? And I think that kind of leads to very interesting consequences as you play.
Yeah, I love the far-reaching consequences that has into the future of the game as well. We talked last time already about, respecting the source material, which there is so much to draw from with the books and the movies. How do you make sure when you're creating an alternate history, that's a big step. How do you make sure that you're not veering too far away from that source material?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of like taking the source material as always the starting point, like being able to extrapolate out in ways that are like as logical as possible, and being able to say, look, I started here at point A and my conclusion is, yes, I'm here at point B, and because of the old history, this makes a lot of sense as a logical conclusion. So we start there. Then of course we have like our partners at Legendary and the Herbert Estate who can keep us grounded and keep us in line with what we should be doing, right? So we run a lot of our stuff by them for fact-checking. Like we have this ridiculously long timeline document that we've written, and I think it's like 10,000 words of just timeline. And then we shared that to get it approved by the Herbert Estate and things like that. So we do our research and we always start with the source material.
And I mean, I think it's pretty clear from everything you've said, from everything we got to see thus far, that there's a lot of love and respect for the Herbert's writing, for the source material we're also seeing from the movie. So I know for sure that the game is in very good hands with you guys, Joe.
Thank you. I mean, I will say the one thing that we try to do is just make sure that we preserve the legacy. And part of the reason for doing an alternate timeline is that we don't want to step on what's been created that's amazing. We want to do the sideways thing and not actually ruin any of the canon over there.
And it's honestly so smart, because in doing so, you now opened up this whole new alternate timeline for everyone. And now let's actually hand it over to Leia for a look at how this alternate Arrakis is still just as steeped in spirituality for all of our players to explore.
In Dune, Paul uses the Fremen prophecy of the Messiah as a tool for survival, right? He sees the path ahead, he sees the consequences of this decision, but he has to push forward because all the other path leads to chaos and to the end of his family's legacy. Your story is also one of survival, but you are not Paul Atreides, and you'll have to embrace the chaos instead of avoiding it. As a part of the story of Dune Awakening, you will have the opportunity to explore and experience the religious and spiritual journeys of many of the people you will come across. Our Arrakis is still the harsh, unforgiving planet created to train the faithful, but Jessica's decision to bear a daughter, Ariste, instead of Paul, has created an entirely different political environment for you to navigate. You will have to evolve in a world in turmoil, a world with no clear dominant force that is embroiled in a long and exhausting war of assassins. This power vacuum is breeding instability, but also opportunity for many, including you, the player. Arrakis is a crucible from which many factions and groups and sects have splintered and spread and festered, each with its own set of beliefs and waging a war against each other, fighting for their own little patch of desert. Like, for example, the Masquerade, who are a cult of religious fanatics who have copied and twisted even the Fremen way of life. As a player, you may not be the Messiah, but the spice will still guide you in your journey. You will have to learn the ways of the desert by following the teachings left by the Fremen and undergo the mystical trials of Akhl. Because for the Fremen, learning to survive Arrakis is already in itself a spiritual awakening, a spiritual journey. Villeneuve's movies have shown us the danger of taking up the mantle of a spiritual leader. They have shown us the power that comes from it, but also the damage it can cause. This story, however, has already been told. Yours has yet to be written.
Now that we know a little bit about the story of Dune Awakening's Arrakis, let's look at how our journey begins with Niels, producer on our creative team.
Hello, my name is Niels Reborg, and I'm a producer here at the creative team at Funcom. Today I'll be walking you through the first moments of Dune Awakening, character creation, where we find out who you are and what you look like. Let's take a look. Here we have our character creation screen. Expression and customization is one of our key pillars in Dune Awakening, and that starts here. There's a lot of customization options available for you, but if you want a starting off point, or just want to move past the customization and straight into gameplay, you can make use of some of the preset character looks we've got available. If you're like me and like making your own character from scratch, however, then there's plenty of options for you to play with. You can change your body type and your general body shape, tweaking anything from height to the thickness of your arms or legs to adding freckles or even vitiligo. There's too many small details for me to delve into all of them, but it's safe to say that if you love sliders, we've got plenty of them. Apart from being able to tweak the minute details of your nose or your mouth, you can even affect your age. Look at that. Looks great to me. The other classics like hair, beards, and eyebrows all have different choices for you to make or affect. But on top of that, you can also add in tattoos and facial scars. We even let you choose how faded with age they've become. Play around a bit with our makeup options, and soon enough I think you'll have a character you can enjoy exploring Arrakis with. Now that we've selected our physical appearance, we give our character a name and we continue, because we're more than just a pretty face. Customization is about more than just how you look. It's about who you are and where you come from.
Have they told you what I am? Then I will sift your words for lies. Let's begin. Where were you born?
Your character's background affects how they get to interact with the people of Arrakis, giving you different dialogue options depending on who you are. For the sake of this video, we'll be choosing the home planet of the Atreides, Caladan.
A world of water. Homeworld of the Atreides.
Next, we determine your caste, where you belong in the strict hierarchies of the Imperium. We'll select Na Familia for now, belonging to the noble caste.
Did you give bad advice? Or make a bad deal? To be close to power is to walk the knife's edge. You had a mentor in your youth, trained by one of the schools. Who was your mentor?
Unlike the other choices, this gives us a starting ability, something we can use right as we boot into the game. Don't worry, you're not locking yourself into a class or a specific archetype. In Dune Awakening, we allow you to create your own playstyle. So if you want to combine Mentat abilities with those of the Bene Gesserit, all you need to do is find the right people to train you and choose the loadout that works best for you. For right now, though, we'll choose the Mentat.
Come here. Kneel. Put your hand in the box. I hold at your neck the Gonjabar, the high-handed enemy. Don't pull away or you will die. Great plots are afoot in the Imperium, and the currents of intrigue run deeply. Arrakis is the key, and the Fremen are missing. You will go to Arrakis as our agent, prisoner. You have one task. Find the Fremen, wake the sleeper. You will know when it is done.
And with that cryptic message, your journey begins.
Now, before we move on to another topic, is there anything you can share, Joel, about the state of development for the game?
Sure. So we've recently opened what we call persistent beta. And what that means is that we're leaving it up 24/7. We have lots of players in there who are testing the game from start to finish, which means that they start in the desert and that they're hopefully passing through the faction system, choosing their sides, and then eventually reaching the end game where they're helping us to test like the deep desert where, you know, people will be harvesting spice with big groups and also testing things like the Landsrad, which is the end game political system. Now, not all of these features are online, and in fact, if you look at the beta right now, there's a lot of fires to put out and plenty of bugs they've been finding for us along the way. But yeah, so this is where we're at. We've gotten these features in. We're trying to now gather sort of player feedback, player data on how they approach these things and whether they're really working and what we need to do to tweak them to be better.
That's what I love the most about betas. You give players an opportunity to break your game in so many different ways you didn't even think are possible.
Absolutely. I like they managed to do it on one server where they could log in and not move. And it was amazing because it was like we didn't even believe this could happen. And here it is. Everybody frozen in place, just silently looking at each other, talking in chat, but unable to actually move their characters. So, you know, that's all part and parcel. It's part of the fun. But I do want to thank our beta testers for their patience, because I know we're testing your patience at the same time.
It's give and take, man.
It's give and take.
Now, with the beta being more persistent, or continuous rather, does that also mean that people who are not in the beta can expect to see some more in-game footage soon, some more glimpses of combat, for example?
Yeah, exactly. So as we move forward through the year, we're going to be showing more and more gameplay from the game. More of the combat system, which has been being revamped, melee, abilities, shooting, all of the things that people would expect to see. And in addition to that, we're also expanding the beta over time. So again, more and more people are getting in, and then they're in permanently, right? Because it's a persistent beta. So it will grow larger and larger and begin to pick up momentum as the year continues.
Joel, I would love to discuss a bit of a more technical aspect. Of course, Dune Awakening, it's a survival game, it's an MMO. Two different game types, which I'm sure on the back and front end have to be treated differently. How does the player experience those different aspects from a server infrastructure point of view? Yeah,
so a lot of survival games are either you have solo games like Subnautica, you have these like, you know, local server 8-player sort of Valheim style games. Then you have larger single server like Conan Exiles or Ark. You have large sort of players on a single map. And then with Dune, what we're trying to do is have these multiple maps where you can play with many, many hundreds of people, right? So you'll be playing with lots of other players, right? So it is a large world to explore and share with others.
Can I assume I am in a server with many, many people. Can I move between servers, or can I group up with people on different servers? Is that possible?
Yeah, so when players start to play Dune Awakening, they choose a world. And that world allows them to, it's almost like choosing a server in an MMORPG. But it's a large infrastructure of connected servers, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the idea is that as a player, you join, you start in a map, and from there your experience should be relatively seamless in terms of how you explore and feel the world. The difference between the reason we call it a survival MMO as opposed to just a survival game is that most survival games do one map, one server, but we have multiple connected servers running in a single world. So this is kind of where we come from, and it also allows us to have a lot more players in this structure.
So how many people am I playing with on like one server, or rather even, can I play with people from other servers? Can I group up with them? Can I be in a guild with them?
Absolutely, you can be in a guild with people across servers. There's no problem there. Within your world, you can join a guild with anybody, right? When you join the game, you start in a server which is a Hager Basin, right? We call it the Hager Basin. The Hager Basin is the starting server. It's a server with a minimum of 40 other players. It's a place where you can build, craft, survive, progress. If you want to play specifically with friends, you want to join the same version of Hager Basin, because Hager Basin can have multiple versions. And then from there, you move outwards.
I can select which Hager Basin I'm starting with. So like if we start in the game at the same time, I can make sure that we're spawning in the same.
Not only that, our server browser also tells you where your friends are playing.
Okay, perfect.
So it tells you exactly who's on which server, so which dimensions and which areas, so you'll know.
Okay, so we have different areas, different servers, different maps on said servers. How do I traverse between maps?
So once you're ready to leave the Hager Basin, you craft yourself an ornithopter, for example, and you fly out into what's called the Overland map. And the Overland map is a server, again, running, that you can meet hundreds of other players on, and allows you to see all the locations in the world. So you physically fly between locations on the Overland map.
Now you said my homies can come and pick me up. If you're a good homie and you don't want to put me in a dangerous spot, where do you bring me early on? Where can I meet other people? Where can I meet up with my guildmates even?
Yeah, so once you've sort of explored the Hager Basin and you leave with your friends, you go out into what we call the Overland map. And in the Overland map, you have an overview of the entire world, and you can sort of see like the different maps that you have as an option. And one of those options are the social hubs, Harco Village and Arakeen, which are differently themed based on the different factions in the game, obviously, right? So you can go and visit Harco Village. It's a safe space. It's kept fairly okay, peaceful by the Canley Peace. And in there, there's bars to visit, vendors to visit. There's the Chome exchanges there, and of course you and your friends can go dancing if you want in the clubs.
Okay, did not expect that to be part of the game, but you gotta relax every once in a while as well. Now, once I'm done dancing and I slept off my probably hangover, I want to get out into the action. Where am I going?
So then you'll go back to the Overland map and you'll fly to the Deep Desert. The Deep Desert is this massive area. It's 500 kilometers squared. Or minimum 500 kilometers squared. It's actually a bit larger than that. There's and that's where you can meet hundreds of other players. There is probably going to obviously be a player cap if too many people go there, but you should be able to handle quite a lot of people. And that's a completely seamless set of servers that are all connected together. It's generally a PvP map with a strip of PvE as people enter so that they can be safe when they come into the map and don't get ganked. And then you head out into the desert and you have these adventures where you're harvesting spice. The cool thing about the Deep Desert, and this is one of the things that I think I've mentioned last time, is kind of unique, is that we have this thing called the Coriolis Storm. And every week the Coriolis Storm wipes the Deep Desert and resets it with a new landscape and new points of interest. So it's an infinitely explorable space and a really cool place to hang with your friends.
I do love that. It really sounds like a very unique blend of different elements from different types of games that you combined here together. I'm super interested to see how that all plays out. Now, before we say goodbye to the viewers, any last thoughts you're having on the server infrastructure and your approach to it?
Sure, I think it's the important thing for me as a creative director to point out here is just we built this with the idea of making the game last and be expandable for a long time. So the idea of the Overland map and being able to place new maps within the map allows us to just keep building on the world and giving players more content, more things to play, more spaces to explore. Like, who knows what it looks like 5 years from now, right? That for me is the main thing. And I think survival games have typically struggled with this a little bit because of the one server, one map paradigm that making the world feel seamless and connected has always been one of our goals on Dune Awakening.
So the future for Dune Awakening is very bright, is what I'm hearing. Joel, thank you so much for joining us once again. Before I let you go, though, is there anything the people watching should be aware of happening?
Sure. I mean, we've just been at Summer Games Fest, and anyone who's Dune starved, wants some more information, should probably be out there hunting down articles, which I'm sure are spreading around the internet at this very moment. But of course, our next big beat coming up is Gamescom in August. And there we'll be showing the game live and allowing people to have a look at the future of what Dune Awakening can and will be.
Awesome. Well, Joel, it was so great to have you back again here today.
Thanks very much for having me.
Always, always. And I'm super excited to see what you and the team have to offer at Gamescom. And in the meantime, remember to wishlist the game on Steam and follow our socials at Dune Awakening. Also, of course, make sure to join our servers on Discord to take part in all the discussions and keep up to date. We also have regular sneak peeks on TikTok, Instagram, as well as YouTube. But that's it from us here today. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and make sure to join us for the next Dune Awakening Direct.